Good morning again, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you're checking in from. Welcome to the latest installment of the CDRouter webinar series. My name is Brian Dubril. I am one of the support team members here at QA Cafe, and today's topic will be on how to use CDRouter to do guest mode testing of your CPE device. I'll talk a little bit about what guest mode is, and then take you into a demo of running through the test cases that we've added in the latest version of CDRouter. We'll go through configuration and running a test and probably analyze a result or two. And then at the end, I'll have some time to answer any questions that may come up during my presentation. So, next slide. Okay, so what is guest mode? So there really isn't an IRC or an IETF draft or any other sort of industry-wide standard that has a publication on it, but it's pretty well known to mean that you're allowing device access to the internet through a gateway without exposing your other assets on your private LAN. So a typical thing is be your home or residential gateway where you have visitors coming and they want to get on the internet. You don't really want them to be on your local network, so you provide them this sort of guest mode access. Other examples could be in small offices or coffee shops or that sort of type thing. Hotspots is another similar term. So this is what I have on the screen now is a typical diagram. You can see the private LAN and the guest LAN are segregated from each other, but both of them provide access out to the internet. So I'll go right into what CDRouter looks like and what it's added for guest mode capability. Close this one out. And hopefully this is big enough on your screen, but there is some zoom capability built into the webinar panel. So if it's too small, I will try to make it a little bigger here as well. As soon as I remember how to do that. There we go. Okay, so for some of you, may have not seen this. We, earlier this month, released CDRouter 10.0. As part of that release, we had a refresh of our UI, so it may look a little different than what you're used to. The basic core functionality is still the same. Across the top here, you can see the configurations, packages, and results, which should be familiar to you. But it's a nice, there's some new, so it's the same functionality with some enhanced features. One of the things that is really handy is that you can rearrange, maybe I'll show this during the demo, rearrange the order of testing your test cases. Before it was a static fixed, and now you can rearrange them by drag and dropping them around. Let's see, so also part of 10.0, we added a couple guest modules. If we go here to documentation, we can see we added them to the multi-port add-on because of the testing involved. You need multiple LAN ports in order to test guest mode. Obviously, you need one to simulate your private LAN and you need one to simulate your guest LAN. So that's why they were added into the multi-port add-on. We have both V4 and V6 tests, and here are the modules right here. Obviously, for the V6, you would also need the V6 add-on licensed for your CDRouter to run them. But just an example, so we use a combination of, so there are 20 tests that we've added, 11 for V4, 9 for V6. As I mentioned, you need a configuration with at least 3 ports, 1 on the WAN and 2 on the LAN. And these test cases basically use a combination of ARP, ping, or ICMP echoes and replies, and TCP to verify that traffic can make it from a guest LAN out to the internet and not into the private LAN. And then, of course, vice versa, making sure the private LAN traffic doesn't go into the guest LAN. So basically, that's what these tests simulate and verify for you. As I mentioned, V6. So V6, obviously, instead of ARP, would use NDP, Neighbor Discovery Protocol, and the same thing would make sure that those NDP packets did not go across the two LANs. So going to the configuration, I've actually created one already, but we can create one from new. But there's one key new test bar that we've added in 10.0 to help for these guest tests. And if we open up one of the configurations here, you'll see that typical WAN and LAN are defined as they always are. Here I'm using the default, so I didn't have to change anything. The WAN will be on ETH2. The private LAN will be on ETH1. And this is the new test file I was mentioning. It's a test file called LAN guest mode. And basically what that is used for, that is the way to mark which of the LAN's interfaces will be a guest. So what I've done in this case is in the multi-port part, I've defined an additional LAN. Just on the, in this case, just V4. This one will be, the interface is one of the wireless cards that's in the CDRouter, WLAN 0. Guest modes typically are open, but they can have security on as well. In my particular instance here, it is just open, so LAN security is none. And then the LAN guest mode is set to yes. So this tells CDRouter that the wireless interface will be simulating the guest LAN, whereas the ETH1 will be simulating the private LAN. So that's really the only change to a config you need to have in order to run the guest mode tests. So that one was saved. So if we move over to packages. Actually, I'll create a new one so you can see what that looks like. So a brand new package, over here on the right hand side, you'd pick the configuration that you wanted to go with it. I just created this one with the guest mode. So that has the test var LAN guest mode set in it to yes for the wireless interface. You can enter a name in here for package name, but the point I wanted to show here is under the multi-port add-on section, which I just highlighted, you'll see both the guest and the guest v6 modules are here. So I'm just going to here show you adding a module, which adds it down here, and with just a test package name, it gets created. So if we go back here, it was gone for a second. There's a second page here, and here's the test one I just created. So let's go back to the page before where I had originally created one. It's the same thing. It's the same 11 test cases in V4. I have a DUT connected up to the CDRouter, and I will begin a test case. So as this marches through the guest tests, I did run this once before, so we can go look at it. Results of a previous one. This is the main results page. You can see the indication that one is currently running. Here's one that I ran just earlier. So let's look into one of the logs, so just to give you an example of what the guest tests will do. So this particular one ensures that traffic from the simulated guest LAN client can reach the internet, but none of its traffic can get into the private LAN, and vice versa. So scrolling down a bit here, we can see we try to do a ping from the guest client out to the internet, and that succeeds. We establish a TCP session from that guest client to the internet, and that also succeeds. And then we check that pings and the TCP session cannot get established between a guest LAN client and a private LAN client. And in this particular instance, the DUT prevents the ARP from even getting sent across. So obviously the ping will never have a chance to go, or the TCP session will not be established either because ARP failed, which is a good thing in this case. So that's basically the series of tests. You know, there's more specific ones where make sure broadcast traffic isn't sent across. There's tests that make sure that multicast traffic is not sent across. So that's essentially running through guest test cases. Now we've learned a few things going through this. We've learned that there are the different vendors implement guest modes slightly differently. There are ones that do their guest mode at what I call a layer 2 level, so they block ARPs from going across between the private and the guest. There are others that chose to implement at layer 3, where they allow ARPs to go across, but they do block TCP sessions and pings from going across. Still others will do just dedicate a completely different network for the guest LAN. So they'll add routing involved. So it's basically truly two separate LANs, a guest LAN and a private LAN. And then they use firewall rules to make sure that traffic doesn't go across. And then there's another type, people will do web authentication. Now, our tests aren't really suited for DUTs or CPEs that do web auth because of the initial or the additional entering of credentials. We can't simulate the entering of credentials for a user. So let's see, anything else here? Going back to home, I think. That's pretty much the guest testing in a nutshell. It's not a whole lot to it. It's pretty easy to set up. There's just that one test var. There's 20 additional tests that can be added. They're all part of the multi-part add-on. You need V6 to do the V6 guess. See if there's any. So this is what I showed here was wireless guest. You can actually do this over wired as well if your device supported a guest over, so like a guest VLAN or a wired. So it's the one I happen to show was just a wired private LAN and a wireless guest LAN, but they could both be wired. They could both be wireless. All those combinations work. So thank you for joining. I hope it was informative. Like I said, it's a new, check out 10.0. It's a nice, new, fresh UI. There's a lot of new features. There's user accounts now that we can rearrange. Oh, let me show that. Rearrange tests. So let's see. I'm still getting used to it. Edit. Open these up. So one of the nice features that you can do now is you can drag and drop these tests around so they don't have to run in the same order every time. You still have the shuffle option. So check out 10.0, the new fresh UI and the new guest module. Thank you for joining, and talk to you soon.